Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Canfield. Joined here with Joe DiFrancesco. He is a Azure architect here at Champion Solutions Group. The goal today is to do a brief overview of a new service that is being delivered by Microsoft called RemoteApp. RemoteApp is literally the provisioning of published applications that are capable of being delivered natively from Azure as a service, not sitting on top of infrastructure as a service, which means that Microsoft provides availability, burstability, etc., and it'll automatically scale and provide you with the highest possible service level agreements from Microsoft. We're going to walk through it briefly. We're going to talk about the different types of services that are available, etc. So without further ado, I'm going to go through a few slides. To begin with, the agenda, a little bit of a welcome, who we are, a little bit about Champion. We'll go into RemoteApp, its capabilities, the applications and modes. I'll then turn it over to Joe where he'll show you how it works in the Azure environment. And finally, we'll end up with Q&A. We expect this presentation to be done in the next 40-45 minutes. With leaving the last 15 to 20 minutes for questions. So feel free to jot down any questions you have, and we'll happily address them as best we can at the end. So without further ado, a little bit about Champion Solutions Group. Champion's been around since 1979. We are a $100 million professional services firm headquartered in Boca Raton. I know you guys can read. We have offices from Boca to Boston and out about as far west as Chicago. And we are a Microsoft Gold partner. We're a Microsoft, we were an Azure Circle partner until they discontinued that last week. And we're finalizing, we right now have our Microsoft Azure Silver, a couple of tests to get back to the Gold level. It's been around now for 3 weeks, so we're way behind. And we've been Microsoft's Cloud Partner of the Year for the East in multiple different geographies for the last 4 years. So in the last couple of years, we've helped move over 1.4 million users that are what are called partner of record for us for Office 365 and its supporting applications. And so with that, why are we doing this? We're doing this because our industry is quickly changing. It's been changing dramatically over the last couple of years. Every one of our bosses is saying, what are we doing about moving to the cloud? How are we going to ensure that our data is secure? And how are we going to be able to make sure that the boss in his iPad from Hilton Head when he's golfing, he can do whatever he needs to do and make sure that we're secure? We have this challenge. The work life is merging with personal lives, and we're trying to make our users, our clients, able to do whatever they want, wherever they want, while continuing to do our job to make sure that the data that they're accessing is secure. So we can either make it really, really impossible, which doesn't go over very well, or we can try to take advantage of perhaps cloud-based architecture, cloud-based technology to try to separate and to maintain control over who's able to do what, where, when, without making it so difficult that the users just don't want to do it. So, and our other challenge is always fun. We have all of these different devices, whether it's iPad, Windows Slate, Google, whatever. We need to be able to one, support them, two, give the end users a decent experience. So we think the new offering from Microsoft and their Azure RemoteApp solution goes a ways towards helping that and continuing to make, frankly, our lives as IT professionals a bit easier, enables us to take advantage of technology while maintaining and safeguarding our current investments in IT. So one of the major challenges that we face today is anywhere access, different types of users, temporary users, people doing projects for us from Timbuktu or wherever. RemoteApp enables you to provide 100% access to resources with backwards compatibility or connectivity into your secured corporate environment relatively quickly. So the solution that we're talking about today is RemoteApp. RemoteApp is in preview, which means that today or tomorrow you can go sign up and you'll get a free environment to work in, play in, set it up, etc. Pricing is still being formalized from Microsoft, so later on when I show you the specs, I'm going to have a price of free. Congratulations. We're going to take a guess at what we think the price range is going to be, but even in internal Microsoft documents, the pricing isn't set. I know it's somewhere, but I just don't have it. So the RemoteApp basically looks to, again, a little repetitive, I'm sorry, allow your organization to grow without continuously investing in large environments on premise or data centers. It allows you to access your existing infrastructure as well as extending your infrastructure around the world and supporting all of the different platforms that you may need to support. So the preview is fully functional. There are a few minor non-functional pieces, like you can't redirect USB devices today and other stuff like that. But for all intents and purposes, the RemoteApp environment enables you through a browser or through the implementation of a small client, remote desktop for lack of a better word, deliver a pre-done demo environment, and or if you sign up for your own, you have the ability to create up to 2 separate environments using your own configurations, your own images. You can upload them, or you can download the current one that it comes with, customize it, etc., and just, you know, it's basic desktop sharing, except it's sitting in the Azure cloud. So it will today support all of the platforms that you would likely want to test on, whether it's, again, Apple, Android, or, of course, Windows. With the app preview, you do have the ability to not only just do a cloud-based review and play with the RemoteApp, but actually, if you choose to, implement a site-to-site VPN and allow or enable access to your local resources as well this way. So it's fully functional, capable, and available. So the question and the goal that we've all had over many years is how do we easily, affordably provide access to, for lack of a better word, fat apps. And over the years, we've invested heavily in technologies from Citrix, VMware with VDI, Microsoft with AppV, MedV, etc. With the RemoteApp, or with Windows Server 2012, you are given the ability to implement a front-end application publishing environment that automatically scales, allows for the access to your current infrastructure, and finally provides you with AD-based authentication with the ability to simply and easily implement multi-factor authentication. So it's quite a impressive environment. And as we go forward, you'll see how the back end works as well as the front end and the user experience. So Azure Remote or RemoteApp has 2 deployment choices. These are both available, again, during the current preview. The RemoteApp, you just turn it up in the cloud. Each user, you would, again, manage them in the cloud, or if you wanted to go through a directory sync process or a federation process, will deliver a basic desktop, not a desktop, but a basic window that allows access to the Office Professional Plus 2013 environment, as well as gives you the ability, if you wish to add a couple of additional applications through the upload of an image. Okay? Very quick, very easy to use. Each user has the ability to store data up there and can be put up under Active Directory rights management, etc. The second option, or the second deployment choice, is the hybrid. And this is where you are literally extending your data center to the Azure environment. There are two ways to do that today. One, site-to-site VPN, as I mentioned earlier. Two, and this option is not currently available in the preview mode, but will be available as soon as it goes GA, is the ability to an MPLS connection from most of the major telcos. They have native connectivity into the Azure environment, which allows then for you to take Azure and make it an on-net environment for resource. So it can be very fast, it can be very dynamic. A lot of our clients are using it actually for things like business continuity, backup extension, using Azure storage, which is very inexpensive and high available, as an additional target for their current backup scenarios. So there's a lot of really great things that you can do with it. Now, as I said, there are two options, the cloud or remote app cloud deployment. Okay? Microsoft is going to provide you with an Active Directory environment sitting in Azure. You can create as many users as you want. You can only have 20 attached at any one time. Okay? Today, they will give you the Office Suite 2013 ProPlus, and I think they throw Paint in there for good measure. But it's a pretty straightforward login. Again, whether you install an application or you hit it directly through a browser, it does take advantage of RDP. It also supports RemoteFX. You have then the ability to put files up there in standard shares. And finally, support all of the different platforms that you may want to. And this is basically going to give you an environment where a user can log in, check email if you choose to, can do Word, PowerPoint, Excel, standards. You'll see how the RDS environment works, looks, feels, touches, tastes in a hosted Azure environment. Now, the standards, or what's built into the preview, are free. It's sitting on a Windows Server 2012 environment, support for RDP, RemoteFX, Office Professional Plus 2013. Okay, and I'm not going to read all of this to you, but each user has 50 gigabytes of high availability Azure storage up in the cloud, and as you can see, it's available. It's not available in all of the Azure quote-unquote geographies. It's East, West, US, Europe, etc. Right now it's not available US Central, and there's a few other places that it will be coming to. So they're rolling it out, and expectation is that GA will be sometime in the fourth quarter, calendar quarter of this year. So our guesstimate, and depending on how aggressive Microsoft's going to be, is that the cost associated with this is going to be between $20 and $30 a month. I could be off $5 either way. There are some interesting rules of thumb as it relates to licensure. For example, Office. You can buy it with the Office here. Typical Office licensure on-premise is not portable, which means it's not usable in this environment. Okay? You have to have what are called sales or service provider access licenses, etc. That is something that is being addressed, but I'm just letting you know that the best way to use the Windows or the Office licensure is still being figured out by Microsoft. It's one of the open issues that will be resolved in the next couple of months. I just don't want you to hear something from me and it prove later to be wrong, so I'm just covering myself and making sure that we're on the same page. So then we have the Azure RemoteApp Hybrid. Takes the exact same environment, okay, but through the addition of the VPN, allows for access to your local resources, allows you to do standard shares from your servers on-premise, allows you, if you choose to, and what a lot of our clients are doing is actually either using DFS or what's called branch cache, is they're actually replicating data to local file shares in Azure. They're doing it for two reasons. One, opening a 1 megabyte Excel spreadsheet across the VPN is always going to be slower than opening it across a piece of wire. Number two, they're using it for, specifically with DFS, they're using it as an alternative or a way to replicate the data off-prem in the event that there's an outage. It's an additional layer of security capable of being managed, access managed, rights managed, etc. from an Active Directory, which you would extend from your premise into Azure Active Directory. Also enables you to do basic Active Directory rights management and extend it out from your Active Directory on premise, or again using basic or enhanced Active Directory rights management in Azure. Focus on the files that are being looked at, utilized, etc. from this environment, and then as you get more comfortable with it, look to bring rights management back to your premise Active Directory. Finally, when you do this type of hybrid environment, you do have the ability to overlay mobile device management, because you're going to have users coming in from God knows where. You can use the Intune solution, you can use AirWatch, whatever. And finally, if you're looking for or in need of a centralized authentication mechanism, we have the ability to utilize this in conjunction with Azure Active Directory Premium, which then provides you a single point of authentication into all of your browser as well as your FAT applications. So it's quite impressive, and all of these are offered as services sitting in the Azure environment, which again gives you a cost per user with scaling, and it covers all of the back-end requirements, high availability, virus, spam, throughput, traffic, etc. So that's an overview of the hybrid environment. Okay, it's interesting. The hybrid environment, when we talk about going hybrid, it sounds like a reasonably challenging thing. And basically to do Azure app, in this case remote app in a hybrid environment, it's not that many steps. It's a pretty straightforward process. I promise you need to read some documentation, do a little bit of playing and making sure you're comfortable with the VPN capabilities of your firewalls or devices. But to do a hybrid deployment is pretty straightforward. You get access to a Azure RemoteApp subscription within an Azure environment. You can do that for free. There's a 30-day sign-up. You can then click on the button and ask for remote app. You're going to be notified in 1, 2, 3 days typically that the environment is available. Okay. Then you can choose to do directory sync, which would do a one-way replication from your AD up to the Active Directory, Azure Active Directory in Office 365, whether via Federation, Active Directory Federation, or more likely just using password sync from your AD, from your premise to sync up, passwords, usernames, etc., AD logins would be replicated up. Okay. Then you set up a virtual network, site-to-site VPN. Okay. Then you choose to use the existing template, or you can upload one of your own. Most organizations that we're dealing with now are following along in the two template scenario where they're using the pre-done one, they're downloading it, and then they're customizing it and putting it back up. Okay. Setting up for remote resources, printers, local shares, whatever else you need to have for it. You can play then with the user access, different methodologies for getting in, whether it's browser, MSTC client, etc. And then finally, you give instructions for users, and it's pretty straightforward. So it's something that you can easily get done in a couple of days, and it's not where you're going to sit there and work on it for 8 hours a day for 3 days. It's something where it's a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and you're working. And you have the ability to either allow for remote access to local resources or not. Okay, we all know how to do routing. We also all know how to maintain what and where a VPN can get to, etc. So it's pretty controlled. Okay. When you do the cloud deployment, and this is a little bit of duplicate of stuff I just said, but when you're talking about doing it most efficiently and safely, okay, what you're looking to do is to separate, for lack of a better word, your premise resources from the Azure resources, but have a secure connection that exists between the two. with Active Directory for authentication sitting on top of it, and finally, and easily frankly, adding a third or multi-factor authentication. I don't recommend you do that day one, but it gives you the ability to completely understand who's getting access to what from where. You are now responsible for managing one VPN, that from Azure to your premise, or if you choose to go MPLS, obviously. And then everything else that's sitting out in Azure for authentication, again, the authentication, the bandwidth, the connection, the etc., that's all sitting in the Azure environment, such that you need to be very careful, cautious to do your job for that single VPN, while all of the users, 1 or 2 or 102 or 1,000, are hitting this infrastructure that you're making available so people can work from Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or wherever else they want to work. Last, you want to be able to make sure that you're able to manage what you're delivering, you're able to manage the images, you're able to provide group-based access to the different applications, and in the back end, able to provide authentication into the different applications such that the users have as positive an experience as possible. So now, we're at about 25 minutes or 23 minutes. I took a couple of screenshots. Basically, when I take, this is a Windows 8 screen for those who have been under a rock for a while. The Microsoft RemoteApp is an application. I click on it, and this is the default interface that you're going to get from a standard cloud deployment. Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc. This one I don't happen to have Outlook turned on, sorry. This is the standard application or the standard interface user experience. You can also redirect them to a browser if you prefer. Now, with that being said, I am going to click on this interface, and it is going to take us to the Azure environment. And with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to Joe DiFrancesco. He is on our team here at Champion, on the online services team, and his responsibility is for helping to architect, set up, design, and deliver Azure-based solutions. So with that, Joe, if you would please give us a welcome to Azure RemoteApp.
Yeah, so as you can see here, I will make that full screen so you can see it a little better. This is my personal Azure account. My network configuration right now, I did something that Microsoft doesn't necessarily provide a guide to do yet. If any of you are familiar with Azure already, this is my virtual network here where it shows my VPN connections. This looks a little different. I don't have that pretty picture anymore showing the VPN because I have a multiple site-to-site VPN gateway configured. So this one here labeled home is obviously my home network going over through Comcast. I just have a basic VM running Windows Server routing and remote access, acting as the VPN client from that side, where I, of course, have connectivity between local VMs and resources and my Azure VMs. What I did differently is with remote apps, it doesn't use your existing Azure virtual network for this moment. And I don't know if this is something that's going to change when it goes general availability or if this is something that's limited to just preview. So I have 2 remote app environments here. This one that's just labeled new is one I just made this morning. It's a brand new standalone remote app environment. And this is one that I have configured with my VPN right now. The ones you set up with the VPN are the ones where you basically give it your own template image. The VM host in the Azure background, in the back end that you don't necessarily have direct access to, actually domain join to your local environment over the VPN. So per Microsoft documentation right now, they basically have you follow this very simple step-by-step instructions where step 1 is to connect this Azure remote app environment to your local VPN. I didn't want to necessarily do that because granted, remote apps connecting to my home environment, and then my home environment is then connected up to Azure. I still have connectivity between the two, but I really didn't want two VPN tunnels going into my house just to talk to remote apps. So what I did was, when I go through the process, it tells you create a new remote app virtual network, so it specifically states it as a remote app virtual network, or link an existing. I essentially tricked it, and this is something that Microsoft actually supports because it's how they set up multiple site VPNs right now. They just don't support it with specifically remote apps. When I told remote app my local network information, instead of using my public IP that I have with Comcast and using my local credentials, I basically gave it the local IP of my VPN gateway with my real Azure virtual network. So essentially I had to adjust a few things. I had to tell it what the pre-shared key is. I had to specify that. But in my environment, my remote app virtual network, which used to be connected to my on-premise, is now actually connected to my Azure VPN gateway. So now I only have one tunnel going from Azure to my home network. Now, to make that work, you have, of course, the local network section of your main Azure networks. I had to specify remote apps as a local network, which is fine. You just have to understand that this is for routing purposes. So the address space that I use for remote apps, these are what, when I connect up to remote apps, those machines will be using this address space. The VPN gateway, this is essentially the public IP of the VPN gateway that creates in remote apps here. So I basically got Azure pointing to itself, modified the pre-shared key, which is what it uses for authentication, and then sure enough they connected up. So now for me, if I want a remote app application connecting up to a file share in Azure, it no longer has to go down to my local network and then back up to Azure. Now remote apps can basically go direct over to Azure. And if there is something on my local network I want to hit, it just goes down my single VPN connection, which is great because now I just have to worry about a single tunnel. So what I'm going to demonstrate with remote apps is my standalone remote app environment that's not connected to my local network. This is the one that includes the Office 2013 installations on the default image. The VPN one, you have to upload your own VHD with the programs you want and then publish them. To publish an application, it's very simple. You go over to publishing, and it lists the applications that you're presently publishing. If you're familiar with local remote apps, it works the same exact way. It asks you if you want to share a program using a specific path, or if you want to look at start menu programs. So start menu programs, obviously it's showing everything that's on this VM, and this is the stock one, by the way. The one Microsoft made that has Office obviously on there. So if I want to publish command prompt, I just check it. Adobe, which I thought I already did, but I might, let's see. I'm just going to tell it to publish. Once this publishes, user access, right now in preview, the user access looks a bit different, and now you can see it's publishing. In preview, the standalone remote apps, you can add either a Microsoft account for permissions, which obviously my Outlook.com address is a Microsoft account, or you can add organization accounts like Office 365 or Azure Active Directory, and then this is how you divvy out the permissions. For the moment, the remote app environments that connect to the VPN, you can only use organization accounts, which are tied into your local credentials via DirSync. For some reason, you can't add Microsoft accounts yet, but that's definitely going to be something that's going to get changed after preview. So I have permission, obviously. I have a bunch of applications published, so I'm going to show you exactly how you connect up. So right now, this computer, I believe, does not have remote apps installed, just a standard remote desktop application. So I'm going to go back to Internet Explorer, open up a new tab, and I'm going to go to remoteapp.azure.com. And this is where anybody would go if they're on a new PC, they don't have remote app set up. So I'm going to install the client, which is very straightforward, download for Windows. They have released, if you have anybody with Windows RT-based devices, original Surfaces, Surface 2s, they do have the Windows RT-based client now, as well as remote app clients available in the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store. So this is what you would see on a PC and on RT. I'm going to get started. It's going to ask me to authenticate. Now, right now for me, you notice how it says organization account down here. For me, it's going to fail because of the fact this is a Microsoft account, so it's going to tell me, oh wait, that's a Microsoft account. All right. So now, what's really cool with this is if any of you are contractors with multiple companies and you have companies that want to give you access to your remote app environment, this is treated as profiles. This one that's labeled work resources, that's just a default name given. This could be renamed. This could be my company name, essentially. So if multiple companies granted me access to my Microsoft or organization account, it lets you divide them up. So I don't get confused if multiple companies are sharing Visio to me, for example. So this is something that you're going to have to experience firsthand to really see the performance, because this is all based on server 2012 R2, which they've made so many enhancements to RDP where it uses so little bandwidth. You're not going to see it right now because of the presentation, but when you guys see this yourselves in front of you, this is going to feel like a native application. The slight distortion you're seeing is actually from the presentation itself. It's not from remote apps, but this is very, very quick. Your end users won't even know, unless they're on 56K dial-up. They're not going to know that this program is not running on their computer so quick. So the Office programs are pre-included on the standalone environments. There will be a way to export this image that has Office 2013 preloaded, because the licensure includes Office 2013 for you. You will be able to download that image, boot it up in Hyper-V, and then add custom applications on here. And one thing that's really nice too, and what Jim mentioned, and I'm going to load up Task Manager. That's something I publish. That's obviously not something that they publish by default. You can see what CPU, how many cores, the bandwidth. Jim mentioned that RemoteFX is used. Right now in preview, it's not there. It is coming. And the reason why I know that is if I pull up Device Manager, under Display Adapters, it just shows the default Hyper-V video adapter. When they enable RemoteFX, it'll say RemoteFX video adapter. Now, granted, RDP performance is excellent now. So from a performance standpoint, where it matters with RemoteFX and what makes it really special is if you wanted to do rendering, of course, you have the capability where you have a virtual GPU on this VM that's running in the background that has direct access to a physical GPU on the server. And it's cool if you want to run anything that runs rendering or animation. And granted, the RDP session is going to be a slight bottleneck where visually to you, you might see a distortion every now and then. You have that hardware, that 3D hardware acceleration in the background that's pretty convenient to have. But Jim also mentioned an excellent point as well of something that's going to be coming that ties into RemoteFX, is the USB device pass-through. RemoteFX allows for that, where if I'm in a remote application, granted, you don't want to do that in Task Manager, there's no need, but let's pretend I'm in a program where I want to open up a Word document that's on flash drive. Even though this is running remotely, I would be able to plug in my USB device to my Surface in front of me that's using RemoteApp, Surface RT, I'll make it more extreme, plug that USB device, and it'll actually show up in here. And I would be able to drag and drop between the two. If I want to plug in a headset to my computer, or if I want to plug in a webcam, I'm using, let's say I'm using Link through the RemoteApp, and my camera is broke on my Surface, I could plug in a USB one, and that's actually going to redirect, and it's going to work pretty well, thanks to RemoteFX. So there's a ability that is going to greatly enhance the service, where pretty much anybody who has terminal servers locally, especially people who have them running on Server 2003, where you have to worry about support ending soon. This is huge because Azure streaming that application over the internet is connected for you. You will get better performance running this over the internet than you will running locally over the LAN to a 270 server. That's how many improvements they've made to RDP. So, but now, because it's running in Azure, you don't have to worry about high availability, multiple instances. You don't have to worry about if somebody trips over a cord or if Hurricane Sandy #2 comes by. It's all in Azure. And because of those multiple site-to-site VPNs that you can do now, you can have a remote app instance in US East, you can have one in Japan if you want, you can have your Azure infrastructure in multiple regions, and all have it tied together using the multiple site-to-site VPN connections. And I know what you're probably thinking, VPNs add, you add extra, you're going to reduce bandwidth because of the encryption. But when it comes to Azure resources with the VPN going together, it's all logical based. Azure has very high-speed pipes between their data centers where you're going to get excellent performance out of this VPN. So having those multiples on there is really, really convenient. Makes it so you don't have to worry about if something goes down. You still have that connectivity. And best of all, when it comes to your users, all they care about is this little remote apps program. If something breaks for some reason, you have to republish an image, somebody messes a golden image up on you, you have to redo it. You can grant them permissions to a different remote app environment, and all they'll see is when they open it, they'll get a little pop-up here that says, hey, you have new applications assigned to you. Click this button to refresh, and then boom, they're there. And if something happens, they're in Word, their 50 gigs of data is there no matter what. That's geo-redundant. You don't have to worry about that ever going down. And best of all, you don't have to worry about somebody saving 50 gigs worth of documents on a local file share that's going to be going over your internet connection every single time they go to access it.
All right. Well,
so one last thing, guys. What I would recommend you all do is to, in your free time, go back to remoteapp.azure.com and then essentially download the client, exactly what I did, but log in with your personal Microsoft account. Right now what they're doing as part of the preview, if you don't have a remote app subscription in Azure, they're giving you access to essentially a prefab server where if you open up a Word or Excel, you're going to see documents on there preloaded. You don't have as many permissions as you would if you made your own environment, but there's something there where you can gauge performance and just tinker around with it.
Great. All right. So back to, okay. Now, as I promised, I'm going to put up our contact information, and I'm hoping the gentleman who we were discussing the VPN with will email me as soon as I can figure out how to, there it is, resume slideshow. It's amazing what happens when you read. Yeah, but of course the T command didn't work. It wouldn't be any fun if it did. Yeah, no, I just can't get to it. Whatever. All right, anyway, let's see. We were there. Q&A. Okay. The slideshow will be sent out to all of you on it with all of these links to it, so you don't need to be writing furiously. Someone on here is going to win a cooler that you plug in. It's called the Voyager cooler. Really cool. And contact information is right there. Jay Canfield at championsg.com. I promise, you send me an email, we will contact you and we'll see what we can do to help you out from a VPN perspective. That is the champion strategy. If we can help out a little bit for free, we're good. It's called our third egg strategy. Think about the restaurants down the street. You got Mike's and you got Bob's. You go to Mike's, you get 2 eggs, coffee, and toast for $4. You go to Bob's next door, and you get 3 eggs, toast, coffee for $4. There's a line outside of Bob's. There's no line outside of Mike's. Why is that? You get a third egg for free for the same price. Food is good. People are good. But you get that third egg for free, you get the line waiting. So I wish you all a great afternoon, and thank you very much.